Well met, lords and ladies. Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. And yes, this is going to be one of those themed ones, particularly because, just to get these things out of the way, most of the week after coming back from Spain has been, of course, me catching up on some editing, because, according to my calculations, there are 11 days left until the Mutant Girl remake is supposed to come out, and I am very behind schedule. Making progress though. It's like I did nothing while I was away, and what I did do is definitely helping out now. But that's honestly most of the week after again. But of course, we have a couple of plays to get through today, and I think you've seen from the title of this video, the theme for today is Adaptations. This is going to seem like a little bit of a tangent, but I guess it's part of the weekly update, so I promise I'll show people what I mean in a moment. So, I got an email a couple of days ago from, it was notification from Archive of Our Own. If people don't know, I do very occasionally dabble in a little bit of fan fiction writing, and when I do, I suppose you could call me a little bit of a fanfic puritan of some kind. Not entirely. It's not that I don't think that, you know, the ability to take the characters we all know, or the stories that we all know, and warp them almost beyond recognition is inherently a terrible thing to do, but I just prefer when the derivative works that I am exposed to bear some kind of resemblance to the original source material. I guess you could sort of say that in terms of the Super Pops as well. You know, all of the different gotcha, adaptations that have been done from that concept alone. And they all, to their varying degrees, pay homage to several different things, both the good and the bad, provided by Totally TV. But yeah, the email itself, went something like this. I haven't seen a fanfic that captures the personalities of the original characters as closely since, and then they said another name of a story that I don't recognize. I think it was from a different platform. And yeah, that just what I'm thinking, because obviously that's what I aim to do. I mean, even some of my more outlandish stuff and the crossovers and things, most of the reason they featured other characters is because I can't really bring myself to say, oh yeah, this is what they would do in this world, because that doesn't feel like them to me. To me, when I like something, I like when I think about why it is that I like something, or, you know, what small components make it up to be what it is and make it likable, for example. So, like, say if I were adapting Percy Jackson, for example, I wouldn't have Annabeth randomly start, like, hopping on one leg or doing a somersault in midair without any prompt whatsoever, because why? For example. Which brings me on to, I guess, the theme based on the two plays that I want to talk about today. Because, of course, we were still watching a bunch of other things in the theatre while in Spain. My friend was absolutely correct. The theatre scene in Madrid particularly is booming right now. And so are the derivative works. I saw a bunch of adverts for some things, granted not in Madrid itself, but a lot of them where you can tell that they're sort of taking advantage of the fact that, oh wow, Prima Computer's the place I went to try and get the hard drive fixed. You can sort of tell that they're trying their best to, what was I going to say? They know they're not going to get in trouble because the legal departments of the source materials are not going to find out. Because obviously they won't know what to look up, because most times they're either in Spanish, or they are adaptations, but they're the same title, but written as would be pronounced in a Spanish accent. I'll roll back to that second part later. The first play didn't have any of those problems, because the first play is, to my knowledge, in the public domain. Mostly because it's an adaptation or a sequel derivative work of The House of Bernarda Alba, the play we went to see the week before, and I talked about, and also one we went to see 6 years ago, and the one that I was at that point studying for my A-levels. So, safe to say I know the source material very well, and had just had a refresher course. But yeah, my dad found this thing where it was called Bernarda y Poncia, Bernarda and Poncia. Poncia being the head servant in the house of Bernarda Alba, and Bernarda, of course, being Bernarda Alba. So it was all about them, and it only featured those two characters. It was set 8 years after the original, and it was just essentially the thoughts of, where they could in fact be. And saying that out loud probably raises some alarm bells, because when you think about that kind of thing, it's like, oh yeah, this will be set somewhere in the future, and these changes have happened. Inevitably, you're going to end up annoying some people. I know that not everyone was happy with, say, Ben 10 Alien Force, for example. I personally didn't have many qualms with it, but there you have it, at least until the third season, but whatever, this isn't about Ben 10. But yeah, but actually, very surprisingly, the whole time, it actually felt very, very, very natural. The whole part before I was saying about capturing characters' personalities, yeah, they got that down. Because in the original, Bernarda is very high-strung and very much a product of the times. I think I'm going down a private footpath. I'm going to turn. She has been indoctrinated by the system she grew up in, which was one that was very repressive towards women, values, your class and status and your money exceptionally. So yeah, you have and then she reflects that in the absence of her husband, because her second husband just died at the start of that play. I think I mentioned this last time, but just in case. Then she sends the whole family into 8 years of mourning, and during that time, obviously, it's all about how there's 5 daughters and how repressed that they feel. But Bernarda, of course, is so adamant that this is the system, this is the way that it works, this is the way that God intended, and all of that. That this is just the way, and then it ultimately ends with the intentional self-deletion of the youngest daughter, after she believes that her boyfriend has just been shot. Her boyfriend was supposed to be engaged to the first sister as well. So yeah, it's that's again, I went into more details last time. If you want to hear about that, check out last week's video. But Bernarda and Poncia picks up 8 years after that, so when the time of mourning was supposed to have finished. And we do hear what happened to the other daughters. Martirio, for example, who was the one who had the most interactions with Bernarda's mother, her grandmother, of course, and seemed to be the one who was the most straightforward, but also the most connected to Adela, the one who self-deleted. And yeah, she actually, after that happened, ended up going insane to a similar degree as the grandmother, and also died, but not by her own hands, by her actual oh, hello. That's what I was saying. People come up to me. I was telling my mum this when I was dropped off here, because I had delivery to do. Yeah. Where was I? Yeah. So she's not around, but the other two daughters, one of them is actually expecting a baby fairly soon, which is a huge departure from the prediction that the grandmother in the original makes, which is that none of them are going to get married. Now, she's not a prophet or anything, but it's kind of implied that in her senile delusion, she's supposed to be the one who speaks the most truth, even if it is hidden. Obviously, the grandmother is gone at this point as well. In fact, Bernarda herself is dying. So the whole play, it's the last day of Bernarda's life. She knows it. You can see very clearly just how frail she is, even in comparison to Poncia, who is canonically the same age as her. But the entire weight of everything that she held dear, the pressure of trying to not have the neighbors gossip about her and such, it all took a toll. I guess you could sort of argue that maybe that's a product of r/men writing women. I don't know who wrote the adaptation, so I'm not going to claim that outright. But yeah, it does seem like a lot of the time that is the way that it goes. But I think I get this bit of leeway with me because Bernarda by itself leans into the femininity of every single character, because there are no male characters that ever appear on stage, I mean. So, you know, it is very much of, you know, the woes of women in 1936, or in this case, there was women in 1944. Yeah. Surprisingly, the warning gets mentioned like once at the very end. But yeah, if you do the calculation, you can sort of see things will not have gone well. Obviously, and one thing, of course, that the original author Lorca would never have known was just the extent of the impact of the Spanish Civil War, because it was written right before that sort of started, sort of predicting that rise, if you will. So, yeah. So I'm trying to make a decision as to which way to go. Yeah. But for the rest of the... Okay, so back to, I guess, the other characters. One of them needs the blessing of Bernarda, because she's not going to ever want to go against her mother, you know, even though she's moved out and possibly to endure 8 years of mourning. Seems like they're very immediately being snatched up, or possibly other men heard about the Alba daughters and seem to have rescued some of them. I think Angustias, the one who was supposed to be married, is the one who is still single, and they very much were like, ah, yes, you know, her looks and beauty have faded, and she only has the money, but that hasn't brought her anything, and blah blah blah. Yeah. Again, in a vacuum, you would think, oh my, that's outdated morals, but that's kind of the point. Again, when you think about it, this thing is so accurate that some characters who were only mentioned in one single moment in the original play get expanded upon just based on context clues. For example, Poncia's husband is mentioned once in Bernardo Alba. His name is Evaristo el Colorín, which just means Evaristo the... I forget what type of bird a colorín actually is in English. It's a type of bird. And that name is mentioned in isolation once. But because Bernarda and Poncia themselves have to take so much of the stage, they... there's a whole monologue while Bernarda is away about how Poncia and Evaristo actually met. A very beautiful romance story to some extent, and it has to do with the bird, Colorín. So, again, I think as well, even the changes that they made, like the one who wants to get married, whose name I always forget. Yeah, she wants the Bernarda's blessing, but particularly I remember that I think Martirio was engaged originally to a man called Enrique Humanes. He doesn't get mentioned, but Bernarda in the original says that her blood will never mix with that of the Humanes family. But this time, we find out that the guy who wants to get married to her is a teacher. Not the highest up position, but not the peasants that Bernarda is so against mixing with her own family. And so eventually says, yeah, I sorted that out, everything is taken care of. That line, of course, was like right at the very end, just before she dies. Because yes, she dies on screen. And I think I'm not really pointing out too much, it's just the chemistry between the two leads. And some of the best acting I've ever seen out of them, from the two ladies. Not that I've seen them before, I mean, I've just seen in general that came from the two ladies. Yeah, anyway. So... yeah, because they felt believable in the futuristic roles that they served. And like I mentioned, I'm not so much a fan of the versions where Poncia blows up out of nowhere. I like how restrained she actually is, but she's still able to stand out to Bernarda because she's the only one who is able to do so. And like, she has her limits, but she cares so much about Bernarda because of we don't learn what originally, but we do in this play. So they make up a little bit of a backstory to the fact that Poncia apparently, when her parents died, was given into the care of her uncles. This is when she was like 15, I think, and the uncles made a deal with Bernarda's father that they were going to serve in what was at the time his house. Oh, sorry, that she was going to, that Poncia was going to. So she basically stayed there for, well, the rest of her life until the play itself. And Bernarda was actually, at the time, extremely kind to her. She kind of seemed a little bit, like, not quite as high-spirited as Adela, the one that self-deleted, but just from the context clues alone, you can tell she was a much more chipper youngster before the system kind of got to her, and she became the thing she didn't swear to destroy, but didn't intend to become. And but that's not all. If it was that on its own, you think, okay, they're filling in the blanks, they're doing what I said before, they're adding details to the original text, and they've really properly analyzed this thing. Like, I'll mention briefly as well, even the lighting and sounds. There are some moments when Bernarda talks to her deceased mother in sort of like a hallucination, where she's saying, you know, it's not my time yet, you know, I need something to sort out more things. But while that's happening, the lighting turns blue, and you hear waves. Because one of the things is that Bernarda's mother in the original play, Maria Josefa, is obsessed with escaping that house and going to live by the seaside. So yeah, they did that lighting change before that was even mentioned. You have to, it's one of those things where you have to know the source material, which I guess in the ages of copyrights and such, you know, that kind of derivative work where it relies on the source material to be enjoyed at its highest, you know, also adds a little bit of validity to it. Kind of like Dragon Ball Z Abridged. You know, you still find it absolutely hilarious if you haven't watched anything Dragon Ball related. A lot of people do that, but yeah, in reality, there's a lot of stuff in there that is very specifically referencing actual DBZ, the original censorship of the dubs, some original Dragon Ball concepts, a few futuristic ones that you can add in hindsight, obviously, like Beerus gets a mention. Yeah, a lot to enjoy there. But anyway, that's what I mean. That it's at its best, you know, you support the official release, which I guess I did, because I don't know if I would have remembered everything if I hadn't seen Bernarda like right before, you know, the week before. But yeah, this is where they add a little bit of a change that if I was, you know, a Bernarda snob, if you will, you know, that would have been a huge issue. And you can kind of say that, yeah, people are very much snobbish around classical texts. I mean, I know I get that way with some Shakespeare adaptations. So here's the thing. They decide from Poncia's backstory. They don't necessarily say why Bernarda's father was so keen to have her around and in a service and around Bernarda herself. But then you kind of find out that Poncia never, I meant her mother, she never properly knew her father, and her mother, being of those status as she was, apparently there was a bit of a scandalous conception, especially for the time. If I'm judging the ages of these characters correctly, that would have been the middle of like the 1860s or 50s potentially. 1870s. Yeah. So yeah, we don't quite find that out, but Poncia mentions specifically, you know, you can say that thing that we both know is true, and stuff like that. You know, implying that there is a very good reason, and I think people have probably worked out what they were implying, that Bernarda and Poncia, of course, were half sisters. Add that to the idea that when Bernarda starts writing her last will and testament alone, and I think that's how he would do that at the time, she mentions her 3 daughters, the ones that remain, obviously. Her estate is to be, so her belongings and such have been to be split evenly between them, and the house goes to, and then Poncia comes back in the room and interrupts her, implying that, you know, after that conversation, Poncia will get the house in the status that she has been denied all of her life. Now, that kind of thing, you might say to yourself, oh, well, that feels very fan-fiction-y. And you would be right. That's the kind of thing where that's a huge leap. And, you know, the play works just fine without it. These 2 ladies that have known each other their entire lives. One of them is nearing the end, based on several tragedies. And that's and even though they have the facade of, you know, don't ever disobey me again or other stuff, then, that companionship that they can't bring themselves to actually say would still be there, even if without that implication. However, they were very clever about this because they never say it out loud. You can just, and there's no actual confirmation or document that proves it. This is before DNA tests, so there would never have been any sort of revelation. And that's what I kind of appreciate. It's like, you can read more into this, sort of like the original play itself. And the dialogue, of course, every line sounds like the same people talking. They have replicated that style of dialogue to perfection. It is probably one of the most faithful sequel adaptations that I think I've ever seen. And I would say I recommend it, but I think they finished performing it now. But yeah. Then, of course, you have the flip side of that, which I'm realizing now I'm going to have to pause for because I've been talking about this play for so long that I've run out of memory. So I'm just going to do that quickly, free up some space, and then I'm going to continue filming, and we will talk about Harry Potter and the musical Parody. Okay, I've cleared up enough space for 16 minutes worth of talking, which means that I can't go into as much detail as before. That bit's still uploading. Oh well, Harry Potter and the musical Parody. More accurately, Harry Potter y la Parodia musical, which of course is a play on words from Harry Potter y la Piedra Filosofal, which is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So it works on multiple levels. And where the Bernarda one was how to be the most faithful adaptation while still providing your own concepts for derivative works, Harry Potter and the musical Parody is not that thing I just said. So most of the plays that we had seen, were only a few people in the cast or whatever, and most of the time going into a very depressing direction, with the exception of the Karina one, which had a lot of funny ones in the middle of that, but also depressing at times. It does depend. It was a person's life story, so you get a bit of everything in there. Yeah, this one I was very keen on looking up because, I mean, not to say that those plays are bad, they were not. But I needed something fun. I needed something funny. So, and very clearly, from the marketing alone, I knew exactly what I was going to get into. And also, remember how I said before that some places will just use the spelling that you would get in a Spanish accent in order to be legally distinct? Yeah, the company that did that play, their name is Broadway, as in Brodwei, Broadway, obviously ripping off Broadway. So, yeah, all of those clues together, I knew it was going to be fun. And that one I actually went to see, not with my family, but with most of that squad. One person we swapped out. Yeah. They were kind of asking me, had I seen the reviews or something? I was like, yeah, not really. I knew I was going to enjoy it. I didn't even know they were necessarily. One of them, turns out, didn't know much about Harry Potter at all. Another one was actually the guy, who got me into Harry Potter, to some extent. Not exclusively, there were a number of contributing factors there. But yeah, he sure contributed. And yeah, it's one of those where clearly the cast are much older. They're doing some musical songs which also were parodies themselves. It was very flamenco related, and there were only 4 cast members who played every single character, exaggerated to the 10th degree, with the exception of Harry himself, because, like I've said before, with some Aphmau stuff, you need a grounded person every time in order to offset the madness that you're being presented with. That's where I think modern Aphmau content fails. They don't have a straight man character or a straight woman character, in the sense of everyone is on the same level of insanity. It's a Teen Titans Go problem. I think I mentioned that before, but just in case I hadn't, that's my personal theory at the moment. That's why the new stuff feels so different. Whereas the old stuff, you would have either Aphmau herself, or Aaron, or Zane, or Caitlin, or anyone really, to offset what was going on. Even if they can be allowed to be silly at different times. It's a bit of a revolving door. Anyway, back to the topic. So it was an Andaluz company. If you don't know what Andalusia is, in the southernmost part of Spain, if you don't count Canarias, Ceuta, or Melilla. So the southernmost part of mainland Spain, I should say. So yeah, they said that, you know, Harry Potter was or Havi Potter, I should say. They changed his name. Sorry, I've been saying Harry Potter the whole time. It's Havi Potter, as in like a play on the name Javier, which is spelt with a J usually, but they made it into an H. So yeah, that was the first thing. The Dursleys, of course, were very stereotypically drunken. Hagrid was kind of mostly himself, but just mostly there's mainly the funny parts and how they play onto the irresponsibility a lot. They changed a lot of the names as well. So Ollivander's was Olivares, for example, which just means, you know, field of olive trees, but it's a name that you would probably find. And then of course, you know, you've got to talk about the main cast. So you have Ron Whiskey to start off with, because, you know, Weasley, whiskey, kind of sounds similar, but they play on that a lot more. So they change all the names of the other Weasley siblings. So apart from Ginny, actually, because Ginny is already Geneva, which is Ginebra, is a type of alcoholic beverage, and I'm trying to remember what all the other ones were actually called, because I'm trying to remember that they changed all the names to different, kind of like the Gods of Destruction in Dragon Ball Super. They were all named after some sort of spirits, and of course Ron himself, Ron in Spanish is rum, so another comparison. And then of course you have the twins, Gal y Mocho. Gal y Mocho is another type of drink, so that's that pun. Yeah, and then of course, after he's presented, suddenly we get the best character in the whole of the production, which is Herminia La Greñas, which just means Herminia the Greñas. But there's a lot of in Spain you get a lot of well, in rural parts mostly, you get like nicknames. You know, you are the something, and sometimes it is strange things. I don't even know what greñas actually means. I never heard that phrase in my life. Potentially some Andaluz reference, because again, there's a big theme of where they had come from. All the houses were changed to, instead of the names of the Hogwarts house founders, they were changed to different flamenco singers. So you have Lola Flores, for example, who was one of them, etc. They also did, like, every single year. It wasn't just the Philosopher's Stone. They added a few different ones where, the Sorting Hat was also a character that appeared multiple times and had a very bizarre costume. But also was the one who was calling to Harry in Parseltongue to open the Chamber of Secrets. Because the thing is, they were trying to get all of the Horripilicruxes. So Horripilante is horrible, and then Horrocrux would be the Spanish word for Horcrux. Oh, sorry, I'm describing Herminia yet. So the reason why she is the best character is because she immediately enters, and you know how Hermione is, of course, especially in the first book / movie, very stereotypically, nerdy and super keen, excitable about every single aspect of magic. Yeah, they ran that to the nth degree. Everything that she did was yell pretty much to start off with and say how motivated she was and everything. She was essentially, you know the kind of person that you turn into if you happen to go to a sports event and you've been rolled up in the crowd and everything, and you're cheering for every single event that happens, and you can sort of like grab and shake your friends and such. That was Herminia the whole way through. Sometimes they would ground her a bit, so you has to be the one to use the time turner, for example, to get the earring of Lola Flores, which, by the way, I should mention, all of the Horripillicruxes were, of course, since Lord Voldemort was trying to get something from each of the different founders of Hogwarts, because the founders of flamenco singers, it was all stuff that they had to do with them. So one of them apparently had was known to have like a ripped T-shirt that he would wear all the time, and for that reason, the way to destroy that Horcrux was to sew it back together, and that was done by Dobby accidentally. Dobby, who incidentally enters the story very late in the Order of the Phoenix time period. I forgot what they called Umbridge, actually. There was a whole different name for her, and there's a whole musical number where she turned everyone into sheep, and they had to rescue Herminia because she was been there for a long time, so the sheep apotheosis was upon her. I can't possibly summarize everything. I've got 4 minutes left, but I've barely mentioned the musical numbers. Yeah, because some of them feel like typical musical sequences. Others were just essentially the parodies. I mean, they were all parodies from what I heard. I hadn't heard of most of the original songs, so for a while I thought they were original. Then I realized, this melody seems very familiar. Okay, that's what they're doing. Which again, I can respect that, because I have no idea how you license that stuff, even if you do, because, I mean, if they're not going to license good old HP, then what are they going to do? A genuine question. And then we get to eventually the final twist that Lord Gondemore, which just means Count More. I think El Condemore is a character of some kind. Not sure. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Yeah, he apparently what happened was you entered the house of the Potters, and Harry's mother, Missy Potter, was who I think is also an actual person, because he came on dressed as a completely different character. It was supposedly you heard her, scream out into the night, and then suddenly that was that. Turns out she was actually just in. She was actually just traveling this whole time. So she comes back towards the end, and it's revealed in true Empire Strikes Back fashion that instead of killing Havi's father, Lord Condemore himself was Havi's father. And by the way, there's no beauty about like marauders or stuff. And also Dumbledore just saunters in to voguish tunes every time, and just planted the mission on Havi himself. Yeah, every time Dumbledore entered, there was always like this voguish music. He was always doing like movements like this, and just living his best life. Probably ripping off on the posthumous reveal that he was gay the whole time. Potentially, though I don't have any evidence about that one, because again, it's one of those things that they never actually say, but you can sort of imply. I'm just dodging everyone. So even when I try to make a promise to avoid filming other people, they always end up in frame. It happens. Okay, so last minute, yeah, they Missy Potter and Lord Condemore then decide to travel for a bit because Havi Potter needs to process everything, probably have some therapy, and all the Horcruxes are destroyed, every single one, but they don't destroy him in the end, because obviously you gotta wonder why he actually made them in the first place if he wasn't actually that evil to begin with, because that was the whole thing. It's like, oh yeah, who told you I was evil? I thought it was going to be real that Dumbledore was conspiring against him, because he's the only person who ever managed to talk about this. Oh, also I forgot to mention, Professor McGonagall was the only character that that ever was not played by one of the four, and she was had the McDonald's theme to her and was just a toy cat. It's like, oh, what's that, Professor McGonagall? Oh yes, of course, thank you. It's all coming back to me. Yeah, because it's a shame, because I watched this on Thursday, and again, there's so much to say. I spent most of that time on Bernarda. But anyway, point is, that kind of adaptation is the other kind that I like. The one that does its own thing entirely, unapologetically, but also is still recognizable. You see where every twist and decision actually came from, even down to calling muggles mugres, for example, which just means mud. So all of that stuff, I heard my friend whispering to the other friend who didn't know all the time what everything was going on. That I like as well. I was going to do a big thing, but no. Please like to subscribe.